Dr. Radisha is known as America's #1 self-love therapist. I love that. I love that title. Um, she is the owner of I Thrive Therapy. She is a best-selling author of Girl, Get Off That Couch and host of Hello Healing podcast. She has been seen on TV's one hit crime show For My Man and featured in Voyage, Atlanta Magazine, Black Doctorate New Network podcast, I'm sorry, Mind, Body, Green, and more. She's an international speaker, two-time best-selling author, and trusted psychotherapist who gets results. So, ladies, she's here. She is here for business right about now. So while I am speaking, go get some water and bring a box of tissue with you. Her work is guided by faith and the simple idea that when we connect the dots between past experiences and present pain, we can position ourselves for a powerful future. Amen. Hallelujah. Combining her knowledge of mental health as well as her love of faith, she helps couples avoid unnecessary breakups and individuals to heal after a betrayal. Dr. Brown is a former foster child who beats the odds by becoming the first person in her family to attend college. She holds a bachelor's degree in sociology, master's degree in social work from the University of South Carolina, and a doctorate degree from Augustine University. Dr. Rashida's vision is to help 10,000 women break free, amen, hallelujah, from the emotional bondage or the emotional baggage, and I guess, and bondage of failed relationships and inspire the women to build new lives of purpose and of hope. Her website, www.radishabrown.com, and her social media handle at Dr. Rashida Brown. And listen, ladies, I have a little bit more good news for you because Dr. Radisha will be on the Ruby Read Book Club in October. Right? Is it October?
I think it's April. I think it's April.
No, June. Sorry, June 25th. So go on Amazon, get the book, Girl, Get Off That Couch. And we will be having a wonderful conversation with Dr. Radisha. But at this time, Dr. Radisha, thank you so much for being with us. I know you have a word for us. Take it away.
Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be here. I have been blessed all day by the countless speakers presented. I've been taking notes and inspired. I'm always open for a word from God, and you guys definitely did not disappoint. And so today I'm going to be talking about eliminating toxicity. And so I'm just going to pop up my presentation real quick and we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, and hopefully everybody can see that.
Yep.
All right, perfect. So I am Dr. Radish Brown. I am a therapist, and I know you guys have had a lot of ministers and teachers on today, but that is my profession. And just a little bit about me. I am from the South, so I'm in Georgia right now, East Coast representing in the house. And so I have loved God and worshiped God all my life. My grandmother at a very young age introduced us to God, and that journey of faith has really kept me through lots and lots of different obstacles that God has placed and that has been placed in my life. We're talking about eliminating toxicity, and I think about even in my own life, and as the pastor mentioned in my book, I talk about being in a toxic marriage, and really blaming myself and really questioning God, like, how did I get here? And why is this happening to me? And can't someone just come in and fix it, God? Can't you just send somebody to come in and fix me? And a lot of us experience those types of obstacles, whether or not it's in a marriage, in family relationships, at churches. As women, we often blame ourselves for relationships and for the betrayals of others. And certainly I was no different. And so as I sat there in a unhealthy marriage, a toxic marriage, I dealt with it by eating, and I ate and ate till and gained over 80 pounds, eating fried chicken and drinking sweet tea and cornbread and all the Southern goodness, right? I ate that every day because I was looking for solace. I was looking for relief of my pain. And as I cried many nights on my couch, asking God to come in, to take this pain away, to fix things, to fix me, to get this weight off of me that I just so nicely put on me, eating the fried chicken every night. And so, and God in all his glory and wisdom, told me, girl, you got to get off the couch. And here I was sitting on the couch and I'm like, what do you mean? You're not going to just come in and snatch the fried chicken out of my hand and magically get the weight off and fix my husband and all of that. And so it was God's way of telling me I had to do the work. And so there is no easy journey to living on purpose, the purpose and completing the mission that God has individually for each of us. And certainly that was my story. And as I got off the couch that night after I had cried myself to sleep, as I had done many nights, and woke up with a realization that no one's going to come and fix it. There's no hero coming in the front door, snatching the fried chicken, putting me on a treadmill, giving me some water, and that I had to take action. And I think as we move closer to God, as we live the wild life, as the speaker talked about, as we live on purpose, we have to understand and walk into that purpose, understanding that we have to take action. No longer can we sit on the sidelines and let things kind of happen to us, that we are empowered to make changes in our life. And that's what this presentation is about, is being able to identify toxicity and eliminating it, not only in relationships, but also in our own lives. And so I hope that you gain knowledge from this. And if you have questions, I love questions, and we will address them at the end. And so I often tell people there's no, God took away shame from me many, many years ago. So there's nothing that I am afraid to talk about. And oftentimes we, as leaders and as healers, we're ashamed to deal with certain things. But as a mental health therapist, it's important that I hit things head on, that I address issues head on. And so that's how I live my life. So if there's a question you have, I'm absolutely excited to talk about it and to address it. But, there's just three things I like to say that's important to know about me. Certainly, you can read the full bio or do Google searches or all that good jazz. But one is I'm very passionate about mental health for women, and you'll hear it in my voice. You'll hear it anytime I've done a presentation or on my podcast. It is so, so very important. And it's really important to talk about it along with the ministry, because as you're preparing to be leaders, as you're preparing to do conferences, to run businesses, to lead in your businesses, whatever that is that God has called only you to do, is important that we take care of our mental health, because as women, we are the foundation for our community. We are the foundation for our families. And we often put ourselves last on the to-do list, and our mental health suffers. And when our mental health suffers, so does our relationship to God. And so I commend the leaders, Pastor Gatira and Dr. Rita and all the women that had the insight and bravery and courage to talk about this subject, because it does affect us every single day of our lives. It affects us at home. It affects us at church. It affects us if we go to the grocery store. We are surrounded by relationships. We're surrounded by people, and how we feel about those things and how we react to those things. And I am so a strong believer that we have to be at the forefront of our own mental wellness to position us for the journey that God has in being healers and helping others, right? We have to help ourselves first. I'm also a person of faith, and I believe that faith is extremely vital for healing. As therapists, we're taught to be neutral, right? We're taught that faith is separate from therapy, but I am a strong believer, just for my own transformation, my own healing, and also the work that I do with clients, that they go hand in hand. And so as you hear the presentation and ask questions, understand that I'm coming from a place of faith, and we need more therapists, Christian therapists, that are promoting faith in conjunction with therapy, because they're not separate items, because we are whole people. We are physical, spiritual, mental beings, and it's important that we marry the two for our own transformations and for the transformations of the people God has called us to heal. I also believe that women are the key to healing our families. So many of our families and communities are broken. And I believe that women are at the foundation and at the forefront of healing so many of the things that's broken in our community. And as you prepare to go into ministries, as you prepare to start businesses, as you prepare to volunteer, to sing in the choir, whatever it is that God has called you to do, you are helping to heal our community. And I just want to commend all the women that's a part of this presentation and part of this conference, and understand that you have a unique journey that God has placed you on, that he's only placed you on. And so as we lean in, as the conference title is about getting this knowledge to lean in so that we can accomplish the mission and purpose that God placed us on this earth to do. And so I often like to start off with this quote: life would be so much easier if it wasn't for people. I mean, if you think about different situations and different struggles, isn't it always like, man, God, if you didn't put them people in place, it would have been so much easier. I could have got that degree if I didn't have that professor that was just giving me a hard time. I would have finished that business if it wasn't for the person at the bank giving me a hard time getting financials. And so as we look at eliminating toxicity, it's about people and eliminating those people and those relationships and those activities that are hindering you in that process to complete the plan that God has for you. So I want to start off with, what are signs of a toxic person? Because we all are individuals and we all have different definitions of what toxic looks like. And it has a lot to do with our upbringing, our childhood experiences. And so often we don't look at situations as toxic. We just make excuses. Oh, that's just how sister so-and-so is. She just always kind of get on me, or she's always, challenging me, or she's always, putting me down, or that's just how my cousin is. That's just how my sister is. We don't look at it from a viewpoint of toxic and it affecting us personally, and more importantly, affecting the work and the mission that God has placed us on. So as we look at toxic people, it's really anyone whose behavior that adds negativity and upset to your life. So it's not overly complicated. And so I often like to explain it to clients as, if you leave a conversation feeling confused and emotionally exhausted, that's likely a toxic relationship, right? That's what we need to start exploring. How you feel after talking to and interacting with that person. If it's a level of confusion, like I really just don't know what's going on or what happened, and a level of, oh my God, I'm just so exhausted. Like I cannot do anything else because it has exhausted all of my reserves and my energy. That is likely a person, a situation that is toxic, meaning that it's adding negativity to or upset to your life that you need to explore. And so that's what we're going to do today. And so I want to talk to you about, what are signs of toxic behaviors, because we often excuse bad behavior, right? As Christians, we're called to forgive, we're called to help, and especially those that are in the ministry. I often, someone asked me one time, I was doing an interview for a New York radio show, and they asked me what did I think was the hardest profession for women, and I said the ministry, because there's a level of expectation to always give, that you cannot say no, that whoever comes in your path, that you're supposed to give every inch and every piece of you, that you don't get to create boundaries. You don't get to say no. And so I always have believed that ministry has been is the hardest profession. That's why it requires a calling from God, because with a calling, He equips you with the tools to challenge that belief that we as women don't get to say no sometimes. And so I want to highlight what are some of those toxic behaviors as you are creating your businesses, as you're creating your ministries or expanding your ministries online or in a physical building, that you should be on the lookout for, not just in other people, but also for ourselves. Because no matter where we go, we take ourselves with us. And it's important as leaders that we set the tone, that we set the behavior in the culture for the church. We set the culture for our families. We set the culture for our workplace, and eliminating those behaviors, so that we are best prepared to complete the mission that God has placed for us. So when we talk about lack of support, when people are chronologically have negative things and always pulling you down, when you say, hey, I want to get my degree, and they go, yeah, right. Right. And it's always a reason why you can't accomplish that vision that God has placed for you. I want to expand the women's conference and have one on the West Coast, have one in Arizona, as the chaplain was talking about, and someone coming in, yeah, right. Right. That is a sign of a toxic behavior that you're now going to be aware of following this presentation. And it does, the goal of that interaction is to provide negativity, is to provide obstacles, and to stop you from completing the from completing the vision and the mission that God gave you. Really, that's when we're talking about eliminating toxicity and toxic behaviors. What we're talking about is those obstacles, those roadblocks that people place in your path to keep you from accomplishing the things that God has placed in your heart to accomplish. And which means it's preventing you from helping the people that God has called you to help, that only or you are called to help, and that people are waiting for your ministry, they're waiting for your business, they're waiting for your teachings, they're waiting for your conference to be able to help ease their own pain. Another sign of toxic behaviors, toxic communications. When people are when there's always filled with sarcasm and criticism and fueled by contempt, and you're like, well, what's going on? Why is it always that it's coming from a negative place? When there's jealousy or envy, we have a tendency to make excuses. Oh, they really didn't mean that. Or really, they don't really mean I won't be able to get my degree. They really will be supportive at some point. And so often as we get into toxic relationships, we aren't immediately self-aware that they are toxic. They are just, for us, very normal. That's just how so-and-so is. That's just how my sister is. That's how my family is. That's how my leaders are. And so as you prepare and lean into God and become and complete the task that God has placed for you, we need to be aware of it so that we can prevent it and we can heal from it as we accomplish all the great deal, all the amazing things that God has for you to accomplish. We talk about controlling behaviors where people come in with sheep's clothing. Well, I'm just going to control your schedule so that you're not, overwhelmed. And then it becomes, you can't do this, you can't do that. The pastor only comes on Wednesday. Oh, the pastor can't talk to you, or the minister can't talk to you. They can't pray with you. And then it becomes very quickly a toxic relationship, and you feel like you don't have any control of your own ministry. You don't have any control of your own family. You don't have any control of your own business. So it's really important that to become aware as you move forward on your journey. And also, not only for other people, but for our own selves. Are we struggling with envy? Are we struggling with toxic communication? Are we struggling where we're not supporting our sisters in the ministry? We're not supporting others? Do we feel like we have to control behaviors and actions? Are we struggling with resentment? Am I holding on because last year at the women's conference, they didn't get me to pray and I thought I should have prayed, and I'm really still holding on to that. So I'm not going to support this year's conference. All of that goes into creating those roadblocks and those obstacles, preventing you from accomplishing the goal and the mission that God has placed in your life, and preventing you from touching all the women, all the men, all the children that you are supposed to help in this journey. And then we talk about negative behaviors, negative financial behaviors, right? And so I'm going to not give you this because I'm punishing you, because I don't want you to be able to accomplish this. I'm not going to fund your conference. I'm not going to help you purchase a car, right? If it's a family member, I'm not going to help you get that doctorate degree that you know that God has placed on your heart to accomplish. And so all of those things are signs of toxic behaviors. And so I often get the question, well, Dr. Radisha, where does it start? Like, why do people become toxic? Is it me? Is it the way that I'm communicating? Is it the way I'm delivering my message? Is it something I said, something I did? And so I want to explain to you where toxic people start. Because we don't wake up, we're not born into this world and be like, I'm just not going to support anybody. I just don't like the pastor and I just don't want to support anything she got going on. That's not where it starts, right? It starts in childhood and then it manifests into adulthood. And so I want to give you this different view of toxic people and toxic behaviors to help equip you as you go about your journey, as you're touching other people's lives, and also so that you understand that you're not responsible for other people. Even in the ministry, God has not called you to be responsible for everybody and everybody's behavior. As moms, you're not responsible for everybody's behavior and everybody's levels of communication. So I want to take it back to childhood, because that's really where it starts, and explain to you how it starts, and then talk to you about how to eliminate, how to prevent these toxic communications as you grow as an individual, as you heal through whatever challenges you're experiencing, and as you create the ministry, create the business, create the family that God has called upon you to create. So when we look at bullying, right, and that's bullying in school, bullying in families, it affects our self-esteem, our sense of being able to trust. Oftentimes we present with passive communication, such as, well, yeah, if you want to do it, sure. I mean, yeah, sure, pastor. Or, yeah, if you want to go to school, that's okay. I mean, whatever. We present as passive with passive communication because as children, our voice was taken away. We weren't allowed to express our various levels of emotions, our various levels of feelings, and our various levels of thought. And so what that sometimes presents with as an adult is people perceive us as compulsive liars. And I want to explain it. It's in a sense that when you have experienced bullying, you feel like you have to say yes to everything. So if you ask, do you support the building ministry? Sure, yeah. And then somebody else asks, okay, do you want to sign a petition not to do the building ministry? And you go like, yeah, I want to do that too. And which you're like, well, wait, do you support the building ministry or you don't support the building ministry? But as a person that has experienced bullying, what they feel like is that I now have to say yes to everything. And so it's important, if that's been your story or if that's been your experience with other people, that you understand that it has absolutely nothing to do with the building fund. It has absolutely nothing to do with you. It's an internal issue that stems from trauma that needs to be addressed. Right. And so that's what this presentation is about. It's really giving you a clear understanding and foundation of how toxicity develops, what your role is and what your role is not, and really understanding to relieve yourself of the self-blame, because we as women are really good at blaming ourselves for things that we had absolutely nothing to do with. And so that's what this is about. Also, children that have experienced violence, it creates this sense of hypervigilance. Like, I cannot get comfortable. Calmness is uncomfortable for me. And I can't quite trust what you're saying. And I can't quite trust you. And so what that could present like as an adult is the person that's a drama magnet, right? The drama queen, like, oh my gosh, she always got something going on. She always mad at somebody, or somebody always said something. But it comes from this sense of as a child, there was always chaos happening. And so for you, that feels like calmness is good and quietness is good, and tranquility is ideal. That person feels like, I can't trust tranquility. I can't trust calmness. And so for that person, drama feels comfortable. And so if you're in a situation with a person and you feel like, God, they just always got drama going on, they just always trying to pull me into drama. What I want you to understand, that is not something you said, not something you did. It comes from this internal feeling of hypervigilance that's directly related to experiences violence as children. And if you are an adult that has experienced violence, you may feel like, oh, this is resonating with me. This is why I get uncomfortable in situations. This is why I can't quite be calm and just take it easy, because I always have to have something going on. And that's where it comes from. And so as you prepare for the work ahead of you, it's important that we take self-inventory, right? And that we become aware of those areas that still need to be addressed, that still need healing, that we still need to work on God with, as we create and expand the plan, the business, the ministry, whatever it is that God has for you. And so it's also important is if you're working with children, if that's your ministry, and if you're working with women that have experienced violence or men that have experienced violence, that you understand that the adult version of it looks differently. And so as you work through and create the plan and the in your prayers, that you target those items so that you understand what their struggle is. Again, it is not your fault, right? We know that children that have experienced complex trauma, it comes with this sense of instability, and I just can't quite keep friendships, and I'm just uncomfortable feeling really close to people and really being really supportive. And in adulthood, what it could look like is what we call energy vampires. People just come in and just like suck all the energy out of the room. You're like, oh my God, what happened? What's going on? And it comes from this deep sense of, I can't really trust people, so I have to pull everything that they got going on. I got to pull away all the energy. And so that's what it could look like as an adult. Again, those relationships create toxic communications, feel toxic relationships, and they're going to be less supportive. And so as you create your ministry, it's important to understand what's really going on, because most often we only get surface level communication. We only see what people are willing to show us. And so we go into this place of somehow it being our fault, right? And as we push in and move closer to God and go all in to what it is that God has for us, it's important to understand that it is not your fault, right? And we also know that children that have experienced grief, that could be grief, loss of someone, that can be grief as a result of divorce, that it creates a great deal of anxiety, internal anxiety and depression. And what that could look like in adulthood is the controller, right? Is the person that feels like they have to control every aspect of everything. Everything got to run through me. No, I don't trust you to do that because I got to be the one making the decision. And what it's coming from is the sense of, if I don't control it, it will hurt me. And so I need to have my hands in everything because I don't want to get hurt by anything. And so if that resonates with you and you're like, huh, that kind of sounds like me, or that sounds like somebody I know, or that sounds like an experience I've had, understand that it's coming from this great sense of grief and this unwillingness to suffer that again. And so we cope with that by trying to control every aspect of our lives and every aspect of other people's lives, because we feel like if our hands are in it, then we can control it, which means we won't get hurt, right? And so that's where it comes from, is this sense of trying to prevent pain from happening to us. And so as you think about your relationships and you think about even your own self and your own journey, this is just a highlight of how toxic, how childhood wounds manifest into adulthood, which could manifest into toxic levels of communications. And so it is important to address toxic behaviors, because we often think that it'll just get better on its own. You know what, if I don't say nothing to so-and-so, sister so-and-so, about her, bad mouthing me or not supporting me, that she'll realize on her own, and she won't do it anymore. Or he'll realize that I really am working hard and my ministry is really important, and they'll come out and support me. They'll help me through this journey. It's important that we understand that the cycle will just continue. It never stops on its own without a great deal of intervention, a great deal of insight, and a willingness to change. That's how the cycle stops, right? And so what happens is there's a level of tension, there's some level of incident. She said this, he said that. There could be verbal, physical, emotional, some level of anger outbursts. Then there's some level of an apology. And then we get right back to calm until the very next thing happens. And you can kind of feel the tension building up. And so I have a very good friend who is a pastor of a mega church. And so what he was experiencing, this level of toxic cycle with his board members, right? And there was always something where he was against the board member, the board members was against him. And it started early on in his ministry, but he never just didn't want to address it. Felt like it would just kind of get better on its own. And through the years, it just got worse and worse, to at the point where there was nothing able to get done in the ministry, because there was never a level in agreement of how to move forward. And so until there was this crisis level event, this insight, and for the people to be willing to change, this cycle just continued for years. And I told him, and I said, listen, this toxic level, this toxic cycle, this culture that has been developed will not change on its own, right? And so there was a hard sell for him, because he was like, no, I'm just gonna, no, I just got to keep praying and just keep doing what I'm doing. They're going to see, they're going to buy in. And it never happened. And so ultimately it took intervention. It took a level of change from the inside out for the entire organization, for them to change this level of toxic cycle. And in the interim, they weren't serving the people that God had called them to serve. And that's really why eliminating toxicity is so important on our individual journeys, because it holds us back from all the greatness that God has placed in our lives. And he only called each of us individually. There is specific things that you have to accomplish that God hasn't given me. There's specific things that the Pastor Gutierrez has to accomplish that God hadn't given you, right? And so each one of us is called to accomplish specific tasks, and that's what toxic levels of communication do, is just hold us back from being able to accomplish those. So we talk about healing, right? And so we're all healers, whether you're in a ministry, whether or not you're starting a business, whatever it is. As women, we are natural healers. And so when we look at healing toxic behaviors, whether or not that's in our families, in our churches, in our communities, it requires two really distinct things. It requires a level of self-awareness. I often tell my clients, change cannot occur without you acknowledging that change is needed. right? So somebody can't come in and be like, you know what, you need to redecorate your entire house. And you're like, my house is completely fine. It doesn't need to be redecorated. I'm good with the purple and the yellows or whatever, right? And so it's our minds work the same way, right? We won't change until we ourselves recognize that change is required. And that's also important to understand when you're working with when you have a ministry and and you're working with people that need change, right? Whether or not they're dealing with alcohol or drugs or depression or abuse of any form, it's important to understand that they won't change until there's a level of self-awareness that change is required. And then you have to have a desire to change, right? It's okay if you know things need to be changed, but you're like, I don't really care about them changing. Guess what? Nothing changes, right? And that goes for whatever journey you're on, whatever people you're called to serve. It is important that we are aware and then we have a desire to change and a willingness to do it. And it requires a level of spiritual and mental intervention, right? Because our mindset affects how we pray. It affects how close we are to God. It affects our openness to God's vision for our lives. And so they go hand in hand. I often say, it's right and left hand, right? You can't have one without the other. And so that's when we look at healing toxic relationships. That's important, the spiritual and the mental perspective on things. And so when we look at how to prevent toxic relationship, how do we prevent and eliminate it from even occurring? The first thing is that we need to create boundaries. And boundaries are really hard for some of us because we always feel like, I don't want to be mean. I don't want to say no because I always am the go-to person to do XYZ. So I feel like I always have to say yes. But listen, boundaries teach people how to treat you. Boundaries also teach us how to treat ourselves. Boundaries are the first form of self-care. And so, regardless of what your journey is, what your mission is, what your purpose is, it is so important so we're here, like the chaplain looking as gorgeous as ever at 76 years old. It's important that we treat ourselves well, that we embrace this level of self-care, right? And that we take care of our mind, we take care of our body, and we take care of our spirit. Because at all times, there's some level of attack waiting for us, right? And so we need to prioritize our mental, spiritual, and emotional health as we create boundaries. We need to heal and address childhood trauma because we take ourselves with us, right? And so even for my own self and my own journey, being a foster kid, my mom was addicted to drugs and alcohol. And after my grandmother died, I went, as well as my brothers and sisters, went into foster care, right? And it was a traumatic experience. And I left that feeling invisible. I left that feeling like I didn't have a voice. I left that feeling like my life didn't matter, that I didn't matter, and I had nothing to say. And so through my own healing, through therapy, through my spiritual work, through my physical work, and changing my physical health, I've been able to address that. And it really gave me a voice. And now I'm able to walk the journey that God has placed for me. With that previous mindset, I wouldn't have been able to come and speak to you ladies and talk about anything, right? Because I felt like my voice didn't matter. I felt like I didn't matter. And so who would listen to me? Here I am, I'm a foster kid from rural South Carolina, poor, like what we say in the South, dirt poor, right? And so I needed to address those things to prepare me for the journey. And it was hard and it was uncomfortable and there was a lot of crying, but it was important. And I think God wants us to be the best versions of ourselves. And so part of that is dealing with hard stuff and also learning and knowing when to walk away. We always think we have to stick in situations. Early on, I talked about being married and being in a very toxic relationship. And we'll talk more at the book club about my journey. And you can read more about my full testimony in my book, Girl Get Off the Couch. But it was really hard for me to walk away because I felt like God put me in that place and I was being punished for some reason. And I just needed to stay and be punished, right? It was the way that I thought that affected the relationship, that affected why I stayed in the relationship. That's why when we look at toxicity and eliminating it, we also have to take accountability and evaluation of ourselves, because we teach people how to treat us. And if we have this internal unrest and we have these internal thoughts that, hey, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough to have a ministry, I'm not good enough to go to school, I'm not good enough to get my master's degree, then that's the type of relationships we're going to create. And God has big plans for you for this year and the next. And it's important that we address that. And it's hard and it's uncomfortable, but sis, let me tell you, it is so worth it. It is so worthy for the journey ahead. And so one of the things I always like to remind myself in this journey as a healer, and I give this to you as well, is that it's not our job to fix everyone. Because as women, we feel like that. We feel like, and when we don't fix people, right? You know, we feel like we are failed or God's failed in some way. And the reality is we're all on our own journey. And God gives us free will, right? To choose. He's here waiting and available to us, but we have to choose him for that journey. And so I want to leave you with a reminder that although you are called to help, although we are as women and as community members, as if you're a minister, whatever that journey is for you, that it is not our job to fix everyone. And so part of eliminating toxicity is understanding that, and understanding when it is time to walk away and when it's time to sit and fight. And so we, take this journey one step at a time. And your life is so very important because you have really important things to accomplish in this journey. And I just want to leave you with a realization that no matter what you've experienced, no matter childhood traumas you experienced, like I did, no matter what struggles you're facing right now, that your journey is so very, very important. Your ministry is so very important because of the lives of the women, the lives of the children, the lives of the men that you're supposed to, you and only you, God has ordained to touch and to heal. It is phenomenal, right? And so one of the biggest gifts about the work that I do is helping people to heal, seeing them start off in pain and leave with hope. It is something that is indescribable, the feeling. And it is something that I never take for granted. And I thank God for every day. And so that's part of the work that you will be doing. And so we need to eliminate whatever obstacles keeping you from accomplishing those goals that God has placed for you, the accomplishing and living in your perfect purpose. We need to get that off the table because your job is too big. It is, your healing journey is too important not to. And so I leave you with any questions. I am an open book, as I talked about, and I really hope that this presentation has been beneficial to you. I hope that it's touched you in some way. And as we take ourselves on the journey, right? We can't take ourselves outside of the journey because we're responsible for ourselves. I wanted to make sure, one, there was a level of understanding of how toxic relationships start, because they never just happen, right? And then also an understanding that it's not your fault. No matter what it is or who it is, whether or not it is your husband, like it was for me, your mama, which it was for me, your church members, co-workers, schoolmates, professors. The sister was talking about getting your degree, and there's so much obstacles and toxicity that happens in higher education, so many roadblocks keeping you from that. I can attest to that. But God has a plan for your life, and it's very big. And so I hope that this has been beneficial and helpful to you. And I pray for you on your journey. And I'm excited about all the people that God has called only you to help. It is an amazing gift and an amazing journey you have ahead. So thank you so very, very much. And just a reminder of what my services are. If you have more information, more questions for me, you can find me at radishabrown.com. And on social media at Dr. Radish Brown. I provide speaking engagement, corporate wellness, consultation, relationship coaching, and therapy services. And I will be back for the book club in June talking in detail about Girl Get Off the Couch. And so I'm excited to do that. We're going to get all into the nitty gritty of it because I'm sure you guys have questions. And so I just thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. And I just want you to keep pushing forward because your journey is so important, so important.
My sister. My sister. Oh my goodness. I knew we were in for a ride. And thank you so much for bringing it. Thank you so much for keeping it real. Thank you so much for challenging us to look at our own stuff. Right. Thank you so much for reminding us that, look, when we've experienced these pain and challenges, just because it happened 2 or 3 years ago doesn't mean that it's over.
No.
Right. I think a lot of times, especially unfortunately for Black and brown women, we have experiences, and because our communities are not always communities that push certain levels of therapy and accountability, and we're like, you know what, I gotta keep it moving, keep it moving. I have things to do, places to go, children to care for, blah blah blah. But the truth of the matter is, we will never reach those goals if we do not attend to the child within, because she or he is hurt, and the hurt does not go away. It will come up, it will look differently. And if you're a preacher, I had a class, I'm not sure if my professor is still on, and one of the things she used to say, handle your business so you don't bleed all over God's people.
Right.
Right.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's
right.
good.
That's good. I never forgot that. Someone else used to say, listen to me. Those things will just pour out of you when you least expect it. If it's not handled. So I just really want to say thank you so much. And I'm about to send you an email. Forgive me, but the Lord spoke to me. So I'm about to send you an email, and you'll understand why.
Okay.
Any questions? Any questions? Do we have any questions for Dr. Rashida? I know she's giving us so much. Our heads are spinning right now.
All right. So someone asked if I have privileges in New Jersey. I am licensed in the state of Georgia, so I can only provide therapy services in the state of Georgia, but I provide coaching throughout the country and actually internationally. So to answer that question, thank you for that.
Thank you. Oh, I see another question. How do you move past your obstacles to help others?
Oh, that's a great question. Like I mentioned in the presentation, there has to be 2 levels, right? It has to be a level of self-awareness that there are things keeping me and holding me back, right? There are things that I'm still struggling with, regardless if they happened yesterday, it happened 10 years ago, whenever they happen, I'm still struggling with it. I have what we call unhealed trauma, unhealed wounds. And then 2, there has to be a willingness to change, meaning that I now have to take action, right? And if that is getting in touch with a therapist, if that is getting a coach, if that's working with my pastor, whatever that is for you, it requires that you take action. For me, and you guys are hear more about my story, and like I mentioned, I was 80 pounds overweight. I was technically obese, is what the doctor said, right? And so in the midst of all this pain and hurt, and then I wasn't willing to change it. Like I knew I needed to change. I knew at 20 pounds, there were some things I need to change. At 40 pounds, I was like, there's really some things I need to change. But not until 80 pounds later I didn't have the willingness to take action and a desire to change. And so that's how you move past your obstacles. You never forget them, right? No matter what trauma, obstacles, you never forget them, but you address them so they don't direct your path. They are not directing your present and your future, right? They are a part of your past story. And so that's how you move past obstacles. And let me tell you, it is not an easy journey, right? Sometimes it's a lot of cries, a lot of tears, and it's not the good tears, it's the gut busting, as we say in the South, the gut busting tears, right? I gotta get it all out. The ugly cry where you just like, oh, but it is so worth it, because if you don't address it and you just push it off, push it off, push it off, it just hinders your journey. It hinders you writing the book that God has placed on your heart. It hinders you from going to school and getting that doctorate degree. It hinders you from doing a women's conference and helping women or helping children, because we're taking this hurt piece, this wounded piece, and we're trying to plug it. I try to plug mine with food. Some people try to plug it with alcohol. Some people try plug it with exercise. We're trying to plug it in different ways. And until we're ready and have the courage to face it, nothing truly changes. So that's how you move past that, which is a great question. Thank you for that, sis.
Thank you so much for that. And we have one last question. Is the book a journal or a book with a companion journal?
The book is a book by itself, right? And then I have a separate journal, both of which are on Amazon.com.
Okay, great. There's one more that came through. When writing your book, did you have difficulty building yourself up and not tearing someone else down to tell your truth?
Oh, Janelle, sis, that's a great question. Let me, and we'll talk more detail about my book story, but interesting part, I never intended to publish a book, right? So part of my healing journey is that I wrote journals. And so I often, that's the strategy I use with all of my clients, to write down your story as you're healing. And so that's what I did. And so I had a friend who, at the time I was hosting a radio show in Atlanta, and she came on as a guest, and she was a book publisher. And we were just talking off air about book publishing and different things. She said, have you ever thought about writing a book? And I said, no, I got this journal I've been writing as a part of my healing journey that God, as I've through the divorce and getting my health together and all of that. And she was like, would you mind sharing it? I've struggled with weight issues and things like that. And I was like, okay, sure, no problem. So I sent it to her, and she says, we really need to publish this. This is going to help a lot of women. I said, oh, no. Then everybody will be able to see me naked, right? Because when you're telling your truth, as you talk about, sis, it's almost as if you're standing there naked. And I was like, people are going to judge me. I'm going to feel ashamed. They're going to be like, you're supposed to have it together. You went through this divorce. You let yourself get obese. Like, I just felt like all of these negative thoughts came to me. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. Right. And so we talked further, and I prayed about it. And God was like nudging me, like, you got to get your word out. You got to help other women, because so many women just like you look fine on the outside and are going home and crying themselves to sleep every night, that are living in toxic relationships, that are eating themselves to oblivion and trying to get through the hurt and the pain. And so that's what pushed me, right? God pushed me. And so I had no idea the journey the book would take me on. It's gotten me featured. I've been on national TV, radio, TV, magazines, all of that. But it really came out of my courage to tell my story. And through that, God took away the shame that I had in telling my story, right? It was very clear that it would touch so many women's lives, that so many women were just like me, afraid and suffering in silence. And so that's what led me. Was I afraid that it would hurt other people? No, because if you read the book, I'm telling it from my perspective. I knew people would be affected. I knew my ex-husband may feel a certain way about it, but it was my story. And you'll see how I wrote it. I never talk bad about him. I never trash him. I just tell you, this was my experience. This is what I felt. And this is how I dealt with it. And so, it is absolutely a journey. And I love to talk. I can talk all day about the book.
No, save it,
girl.
Save it, because listen, everyone, we are having Dr. Radisha back on June 25th on the Ruby Read book club. Look up Mount Rubidoux SDA Church. The flyer and the information would be there, but mark your calendars. The book is Girl, Get Off That Couch, and it is Saturday, June 25th at 4 p.m. from 4 to 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We will have Dr. Radisha back with us. Until then, thank you so much,
thank you guys,
Dr. Brown, for everything.